At 11:47 p.m. on April 5, 1945, First Lieutenant Vernon Baker crouched in a drainage ditch 200 yards from Castle Aghinolfi, watching German tracers arc across the Italian darkness. 25 years old, 6 months in combat, zero recognition for any of it, the castle sat on a hill above the village of Stratoia, northern Italy, 15 miles from the Gothic line. Medieval stone walls, 3 feet thick, German machine gun positions commanded every approach. Minefields surrounded the base. Barbed wire wrapped the perimeter in concentric circles. Inside, 2 companies of Wehrmacht infantry had turned a 12th century fortress into a 20th century killing machine. Baker belonged to Company C, 370th Infantry Regiment, 92nd Infantry Division, the Buffalo Soldiers, all black enlisted men, mostly white officers, fighting a war on 2 fronts against the Germans ahead, and against American racism behind every order, every promotion denied, every decoration downgraded. His company had been trying to take Castle Aghinolfi for 3 days, 3 separate assaults, 3 different white company commanders. All 3 attacks failed. The first cost 42 men, the second cost 38. The third never made it past the minefield. Medics stopped counting after the first hour. Baker had watched each assault from a forward observation post, watched American soldiers advance across open ground, watched German MG-42s open fire at 1,200 rounds per minute, watched the attacks collapse, watched medics drag bodies back across fields turned red. The problem was tactical and obvious. The castle sat atop a hill with clear fields of fire in every direction. The Germans had spent 3 months fortifying the position. They knew every approach, every angle, every distance. They had pre-registered their mortars on every piece of cover. They had interlocking fields of fire from multiple machine gun positions. They had ammunition and food stockpiled for a siege. The American problem was also obvious. The 92nd Infantry Division was undermanned, under-equipped, and under-trusted by the white generals who commanded it. Black soldiers were given the worst assignments, the oldest equipment, the most dangerous missions. When they succeeded, white officers took credit. When they failed, it confirmed every racist assumption about black soldiers' supposed inability to fight. Baker had seen this pattern for 6 months. He had led patrols, taken objectives, cleared German positions. His platoon had one of the highest success rates in the regiment. None of it mattered. He was still just a black lieutenant in an army that didn't want him, fighting a war that promised freedom abroad while denying it at home. Tonight was different. Tonight the battalion commander had run out of white officers willing to lead another assault on Castle Aghinolfi. Tonight they needed someone expendable, someone they could order to attack a fortified position with minimal support and maximum expected casualties, someone whose death wouldn't create uncomfortable questions. They chose Baker. The orders came at 2100 hours. Baker was to lead a reinforced squad, 7 men, on a night infiltration of the German positions around Castle Aghinolfi. His mission: eliminate the forward observation posts, destroy the machine gun nests covering the main approach, and clear a path for the main assault at dawn. 7 men against 2 companies of Germans in a fortified castle. The math didn't work. Everyone knew it. The battalion commander knew it. The company commander knew it. Baker knew it, but Baker also knew something else. This was his chance, not just to complete the mission, but to prove what black soldiers could do when given the opportunity, to show that courage had no color, to demonstrate that a black officer could accomplish what 3 white officers could not. He gathered his squad at 2200 hours, 7 men, 4 privates, 2 corporals, 1 sergeant, all black, all volunteers. Baker had learned early in his career never to order men into situations he wouldn't enter himself, so he asked for volunteers. Every man in his platoon raised a hand. He chose the 7 best shots, the 7 steadiest under fire, the 7 he trusted most. Private James Thomas, 22 years old, from Detroit, grew up hunting in Michigan woods, could shoot a rifle like he was born with one. Quiet, methodical, never wasted ammunition. Private Robert Brown, 19 years old, from Mississippi, joined the army to escape sharecropping. Strong as an ox, could carry twice the ammunition of anyone else. Always smiling, even under fire. Corporal Samuel Hayes, 24 years old, from Philadelphia. High school graduate, rare among enlisted men in 1945. Smart tactical mind, understood terrain and angles. Baker's most trusted NCO, Private George Watson, 21 years old, from Alabama, had seen a black man lynched when he was 12. Joined the army because fighting Germans seemed cleaner than fighting American racism. Fierce, aggressive, controlled anger that made him fearless. Private Edward Johnson, 23 years old, from Chicago, former factory worker. Understood machines, could field strip and reassemble any weapon in 30 seconds. Valuable skill when weapons jammed under fire. Corporal Henry Jones, 26 years old, from Georgia, oldest man in the squad. Married, 2 children back home, fought because he wanted his children to grow up in an America that treated them as equals. Steady, reliable, never panic. Sergeant John Fox, 25 years old, from Boston. Baker, second in command, smart, brave, loyal, had turned down opportunities to transfer to other units because he believed in Baker's leadership. 8 men total, including Baker against hundreds of Germans in fortified positions. Baker briefed them at 22:30 hours. He spread a hand, drawn map on the ground. The map showed the castle, the surrounding German positions, the known machine gun nests, the likely patrol routes, the fields of fire. "We not taking the castle," Baker said. "We recreating an opening. 3 machine gun positions here, here, and here," he pointed. "These 3 control the main approach. Knock them out. The Germans lose their overlapping fields of fire. Dawn assault has a chance." "How we getting there, Lieutenant?" Hayes asked, crawling. "No noise, no firing unless absolutely necessary. We use knives, grenades, hands. We get close before they know we there, and if they spot us, then we fight." They checked weapons. Baker carried an M1 Garand rifle, 8 round-on block clips, 2 fragmentation grenades, a trench knife, a .45 pistol. Every man carried similar loads, maximum firepower, minimum weight. They wore dark fatigues, faces blackened with burnt cork. No helmets, too much noise. Wool caps instead. If you want to see how Lieutenant Baker's squad of 7 volunteers performs against a fortified German castle defended by heavy machine guns, please like this video. This helps us share more forgotten stories of the Buffalo Soldiers like this. If you haven't subscribed, please click subscribe. They moved out at 2300 hours, single file. Baker led They stayed low, moved through shadows, avoided moonlight. The Italian countryside was cold in April. Temperature around 45 degrees, ground damp from recent rain. Good for quiet movement, mud-absorbed footsteps. 200 yards to the first German position. They crawled the last 100 slow, patient. Baker had learned infiltration tactics from an old sergeant during training. Speed gets you killed, patience keeps you breathing. He crawled 6 inches, stopped, listened, crawled 6 more inches. 45 minutes to cover 100 yards, exhausting. Arms aching, legs cramping. But they reached the first German position undetected, a machine gun nest MG-42, 2-man crew, sandbags stacked 4 feet high. The Germans were alert, scanning the darkness, but looking for movement at distance. They weren't expecting anyone to crawl directly into their position. Baker signaled Hayes. Both men approached from opposite sides, crawled within 3 feet of the sandbags, close enough to hear the Germans talking. Low voices, casual. One was smoking. Baker could smell the tobacco. He looked at Hayes. Hayes nodded. Both men stood simultaneously, came over the sandbags before the Germans could react. Baker hit the first German with his trench knife, drove the blade up under the ribcage into the heart. The German died instantly, silently. Hayes took the second German the same way. Clean, quiet, efficient. 2 Germans dead, 1 machine gun silenced, 6 men remaining in Baker's squad, all still alive. They moved to the second position. Another machine gun nest, 50 yards north, same approach, crawling, patience, silence. This time it took an hour. The moon was brighter now, more exposed ground. They had to move slower, wait for cloud cover, time their movement to shadows, but they reached the position. This nest had 3 Germans, gun crew plus an observer, more difficult. Baker couldn't take 3 men simultaneously with knives. He needed a different approach. He pulled a fragmentation grenade from his belt. Standard Mark II pineapple grenade, 4-second fuse. Lethal radius 15 yards. He signaled his squad to take cover, yanked the pin, counted one, threw hard directly into the machine gun nest. The grenade detonated. Explosion lit up the darkness. All 3 Germans fell. The machine gun toppled sideways off its mount, but the explosion compromised stealth. German positions across the hillside erupted with activity. Shouts in German. Flares shot into the sky. Searchlights swept the ground. Baker made the decision. We're exposed. Aggressive advance. Keep moving. Don't give them time to coordinate fire. The squad stood and ran forward toward the Germans, not away. Counterintuitive. Every instinct said retreat. Training said advance. Close the distance. Get inside their reaction cycle. German rifles opened fire. MG-42s from positions higher on the hill. Tracer rounds lit the darkness. Baker ran in a crouch, zigzagging, changing direction every 5 steps. Bullets cracked past his head. One round tore through his sleeve without touching skin. He spotted a 3rd machine gun position 40 yards ahead. The crew was setting up, bringing the gun to bear on his squad. If that gun opened fire, his men would be cut down in seconds. Baker didn't think, he reacted. Sprinted directly at the position, close to 20 yards. The German gunner was swinging the MG-42 toward him. Baker fired his Garand, 8-round semi-automatic aimed shots. The gunner fell. The loader grabbed for the gun. Baker fired again, empty. The in-block clip ejected with its distinctive ping. He dropped the empty Garand, pulled his .45 pistol, closed to 10 yards, fired twice. The loader fell. A 3rd German emerged from behind the sandbags with a rifle. Baker shot him in the chest. The German dropped, 3 Germans dead. 3rd machine gun nest neutralized. Baker retrieved his Garand, loaded a fresh clip, kept moving. Behind him, his squad was engaged with German infantry emerging from positions around the castle. Hayes had his rifle up, firing controlled bursts. Thomas was down on one knee, methodical shooting, 1 target at a time. Brown was providing covering fire while Johnson reloaded. But Watson was down. Baker saw him fall, saw the blood spreading across his chest. Hayes reached him first, checked for pulse, shook his head. Watson was dead, 1st casualty of the night. No time to grieve. German forces were concentrating. More machine guns opening fire from higher positions. Mortar rounds started falling. The Germans had found their range. Explosions bracketed the squad's position. Baker spotted a German observation post on the ridgeline. Stone structure, partially underground, reinforced. A forward observer was directing mortar fire from that position. As long as that observer lived, the mortars would continue walking fire directly onto Baker's squad. Hayes Jones, with me, everyone else suppressing fire on the castle. Baker ran toward the observation post. Hayes and Jones followed 60 yards uphill. German rifles tracked their movement. Bullets kicked up dirt around their boots. A mortar round landed 15 yards away. Shrapnel whistled overhead. They reached the observation post. Heavy wooden door, closed. Baker pulled his last grenade, yanked the pin, kicked the door. It didn't budge. Reinforced from inside, he wedged the grenade against the door frame, shouted "down," and threw himself flat. The grenade detonated. The door blew inward. Baker was up and moving before the smoke cleared. He went through the doorway with his pistol raised, 2 Germans inside. One was the forward observer, maps spread on a table, radio equipment. The other was a guard with a rifle. The guard brought his weapon up. Baker shot him twice. The observer reached for a pistol on the table. Hayes came through the door behind Baker, fired once. The observer fell across his maps. Baker grabbed the radio, smashed it against the wall. Then he gathered the maps, stuffed them inside his jacket. Intelligence valuable. German defensive positions, minefields, troop concentrations worth taking back. But now they were trapped inside a German observation post, surrounded by enemy forces, 60 yards from their own squad. The only route back was across open ground under fire. Jones looked at Baker. "What is the plan, Lieutenant?" "We run. Fast. Don't stop. Covering fire from our position should keep German heads down." They emerged from the observation post at a full sprint. German rifles opened fire immediately. Machine guns from the castle, mortars starting to bracket their position again. Baker ran harder than he'd ever run in his life. Legs pumping, lungs burning. 40 yards, Jones went down. Baker heard him cry out, saw him fall tumbling forward. Baker and Hayes reached him simultaneously. Jones had taken a rifle round through the leg, femur shattered, bone protruding through the skin. Massive blood loss, he was going into shock. Baker grabbed one arm, Hayes grabbed the other. They dragged Jones toward their position, 20 yards, 15 yards. Jones was screaming now, pain breaking through shock. Every movement toward the leg wound wider. A German soldier appeared from behind a rock outcropping, 10 yards away, rifle raised. Before he could fire, Thomas shot him from the American position. Perfect shot. The German fell. They reached their position. Brown immediately started working on Jones, applying a tourniquet, trying to stop the bleeding. But the wound was too severe. Jones was dying. Everyone could see it. Jones grabbed Baker's arm. "Tell my wife. Tell her I fought for them. For our children, tell her it mattered." "You'll tell her yourself, Sergeant. You're going home." Jones smiled weakly. "Don't lie to a dying man, Lieutenant. It is beneath you." He died 30 seconds later, second casualty. Baker checked his remaining men, 6 left, including himself. Watson dead, Jones dead. 5 enlisted men, Hayes, Thomas, Brown, Johnson, Fox, all wounded to some degree. Nothing serious yet, but exhaustion, minor shrapnel wounds, bruises from diving for cover. They had accomplished the mission objectives: 3 machine gun nests destroyed, observation post neutralized, German defensive coordination disrupted. The dawn assault would have a better chance. But the cost was 2 good men dead, and the night wasn't over. German counterattack came at 0130 hours. Infantry squad, 12 men advancing from the castle. They were trying to retake the captured machine gun positions, re-establish their defensive line. Baker saw them coming. Form a defensive line, conserve ammunition, aimed shots only. Wait until they're close. His 5 remaining men spread out in a shallow depression that provided minimal cover. They had good fields of fire. The Germans would have to cross 30 yards of open ground to reach them. The Germans advanced cautiously. They knew Americans were in the area but didn't know exact positions. They moved in a tactical formation, covering each other, professional soldiers doing their job. Baker let them come 25 yards, 20 yards, 15 yards. Now, 6 American rifles opened fire simultaneously. The German formation collapsed. Men fell. Others scattered, seeking cover where none existed. Baker fired his 8-round Garand empty, reloaded, fired again. Hayes was shooting methodically beside him, 1 shot per target. Thomas never missed. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 9 Germans lay dead or dying in the open ground. 3 had retreated back toward the castle. But Johnson was hit, rifle round through the shoulder. He was conscious, still breathing, but losing blood. Brown worked on him with a field dressing, but medical attention required evacuation to American lines. Baker made the decision. "We're pulling back, mission accomplished. We stay here, we all die. We move now, maybe we make it." "What about the wounded?" Fox asked. "We carry them." They fashioned a makeshift stretcher from rifles and uniform jackets for Johnson. Hayes and Thomas carried him. Baker took point. Brown and Fox provided rear security. They started moving at 0200 hours, back toward American lines, 800 yards, carrying a wounded man, exhausted, low on ammunition, surrounded by Germans. The withdrawal took 3 hours. They moved slowly, cautiously. German patrols were active, searching for the American squad that had caused such damage. Twice they had to hide, let German soldiers pass within yards. Once they had to fight. A German patrol spotted them at 0330 hours. 5 Germans moving through a grove of trees. Both groups saw each other simultaneously. Distance 40 yards. Baker fired first. His Garand barked. The lead German fell. The others scattered, took cover, returned fire. Bullets snapped through the trees. Thomas laid down the stretcher, brought his rifle up, fired. Another German fell. Hayes was firing from behind a tree. Fox flanked right, caught a German soldier in profile, shot him. The firefight was brief, intense. When it ended, 4 Germans were dead. 1 had escaped, but the escaped German would alert other patrols. They had maybe 15 minutes before German reinforcements arrived. "Move, now, don't stop." They ran as much as exhausted men carrying a wounded comrade could run. Baker pushed them. Every step was agony, legs trembling, arms shaking from fatigue. Johnson was semi-conscious, moaning with every jostle. German forces were converging. They could hear shouts, whistles, coordination. Mortar rounds started falling behind them, walking forward trying to bracket their position. 400 yards from American lines. 300 yards. Baker could see friendly positions ahead. Muzzle flashes from American rifles providing covering fire. German machine gun opened fire from their right flank. MG-42, recognizable by its high rate of fire. Bullets tore through the trees. Brown cried out, spun, fell, shot through the side. They couldn't stop, couldn't help him. Brown was conscious, trying to stand, bleeding heavily. Baker grabbed him, threw Brown's arm over his shoulder, kept moving. Hayes and Thomas still had Johnson on the stretcher. Fox was providing covering fire, burning through his ammunition. 200 yards, 100 yards. American soldiers were shouting encouragement, waving them forward. Medics were ready, 50 yards. A mortar round landed close. The explosion knocked Baker off his feet. His ears rang. Dirt and debris rained down. He forced himself up, grabbed Brown again, stumbled forward. 25 yards. American soldiers ran out to meet them, grabbed the wounded, pulled them into cover. Baker collapsed behind the defensive line, gasped for air, tried to stop shaking. They had made it. 6 men started the mission. 4 came back alive. Watson and Jones dead. Johnson and Brown critically wounded. Hayes, Thomas, Fox, and Baker wounded but mobile. But they had accomplished the impossible. Destroyed 3 machine gun nests. Eliminated the forward observation post. Killed at least 26 Germans. Captured valuable intelligence about German defensive positions. And most importantly, created an opening for the dawn assault. The main assault launched at 0600 hours. 2 companies of American infantry, supported by artillery and armor, they advanced through the gap Baker's squad had created. The German defensive line, weakened and disorganized by the night infiltration, couldn't coordinate effective resistance. Castle Aghinolfi fell by 0800 hours. American forces secured the position. The Gothic line defense in that sector collapsed. The way to northern Italy lay open. Baker watched from a medical tent while medics bandaged his wounds. Minor shrapnel injuries, exhaustion, dehydration. Nothing serious. He would be back on duty in 24 hours. A colonel from division headquarters visited at 0900 hours. White officer, mid-40s, career soldier. He stood at the entrance to the tent, looked at Baker. "You're Lieutenant Baker." "Yes, sir. Hell of a job last night. Hell of a job. Your company commander is recommending you for the Medal of Honor." "Thank you, sir." "What about my men? They deserve recognition too. They'll get bronze stars, maybe silver stars, we'll see. They deserve more than that, sir. They fought as hard as any soldiers in this army." The colonel's expression changed, hardened. "Listen, Lieutenant, you did good work. Don't push your luck. Be grateful for what you're getting." The message was clear. A black officer could be brave, could be effective, could complete impossible missions, but couldn't expect equal recognition. The Medal of Honor was for white soldiers. Black soldiers got lesser awards. That was the rule, unwritten but absolute. Baker's recommendation for the Medal of Honor was submitted on April 15, 1945. It included detailed after-action reports, witness statements, confirmed enemy casualties, tactical analysis, everything required for the nation's highest military honor. The recommendation moved up the chain of command. Regiment approved it. Division approved it. Corps approved it. Army headquarters approved it. Then it reached the War Department in Washington. There, someone made a decision. A black officer receiving the Medal of Honor would send the wrong message, would challenge assumptions about black soldiers' capabilities, would create uncomfortable questions about why so few black soldiers had received the award throughout American military history. The recommendation was downgraded to the Distinguished Service Cross, still a high honor, second only to the Medal of Honor, but not the same, not equal recognition for equal valor. Baker received his DSC in a ceremony on May 2, 1945. The war in Europe ended 5 days later. He never questioned the decision publicly, never complained, never claimed he deserved more, but he knew, and every black soldier in the 92nd Division knew. The message was clear: your courage counts, but not as much. Your sacrifice matters, but not equally. You can fight and die for America, but you'll never be fully American. Baker returned to the United States in December 1945. He was 26 years old, combat veteran, decorated officer. one of the most effective soldiers in the Italian campaign. He applied for positions with police departments, rejected, applied for jobs with fire departments, rejected, applied for federal jobs that specifically recruited veterans, rejected. The reason was never stated explicitly, but Baker understood. America in 1945 didn't want black war heroes, didn't want black men who had proven themselves equal to or better than white soldiers, didn't want reminders that racism, not capability, determined who received recognition and opportunity. He eventually found work with the Veterans Administration, helping other black veterans navigate the bureaucracy, access benefits, file claims. It was meaningful work, important work, but it wasn't what he'd hoped for when he risked his life in Italy. Baker married in 1947. Fern Brown, a teacher from Wyoming, they built a life together, raised a family, bought a house, participated in their community, became active in civil rights organizations. Baker spoke at schools, churches, community centers, told his story, not to glorify himself, but to illustrate what black soldiers had accomplished, despite facing discrimination from their own army. Years passed. Decades. Baker watched America slowly, painfully, change. Civil rights movement, desegregation, voting rights, progress, but never fast enough, never complete. In 1992, a researcher at Shaw University, studying black soldiers in World War II, discovered discrepancies in Medal of Honor awards. Between 1941 and 1945, over 400 Medals of Honor were awarded. Not one went to a black soldier. Not one, despite over 1 million black Americans serving in uniform, despite documented acts of exceptional valor, despite recommendations submitted and approved at every level below the War Department. The researcher, Dr. Elliot McIntosh, compiled evidence. He found 7 cases where black soldiers had been recommended for the Medal of Honor, where recommendations had been downgraded based on race, not merit. Vernon Baker's case was one of 7. McIntosh presented his findings to the Army, requested review. The Army initially resisted, claimed records were incomplete, claimed standards had been consistently applied, claimed race played no factor in awards decisions, but McIntosh persisted. Other historians joined his effort. Civil rights organizations applied pressure. Congressional representatives asked questions, media attention grew. Finally, in 1996, the Army authorized a comprehensive review of Medal of Honor recommendations for black soldiers in World War II. The review examined hundreds of cases, applied modern standards, evaluated evidence objectively. The review concluded that 7 black soldiers had been denied the Medal of Honor due to racial discrimination. 7 men who met every criteria. 7 men whose recommendations had been systematically downgraded because of the color of their skin. Vernon Baker was one of the 7, the only one still alive. On January 13, 1997, President Bill Clinton held a ceremony at the White House. Vernon Baker, now 77 years old, stood in the East Room. Around him were the families of the 6 other black soldiers finally receiving their deserved recognition. Freddie Stowers, Edward Carter Jr., John Fox, Willie James Jr., Charles Thomas, George Watson, 6 families receiving awards posthumously. One surviving recipient, 52 years late. Clinton spoke about injustice, about courage unrecognized, about debt unpaid, about America's continuing struggle to live up to its founding ideals. Then he draped the Medal of Honor around Vernon Baker's neck. Baker stood at attention, 77 years old, white-haired, distinguished, dignified. He had waited 52 years for this moment, more than half a century, longer than many soldiers lived, long enough to bury both his wife and his daughter, long enough to wonder if recognition would ever come. When Clinton finished the citation, Baker spoke briefly. His voice was steady, clear, remarkable for a man his age. "I want to thank my country for finally recognizing what I did, but I also want people to understand what this really means. This medal isn't just for me. It is for every black soldier who fought in World War II and never received the recognition they deserved. It is for the men who died beside me in Italy. It is for every soldier who did their duty and was told it wasn't good enough because of their race. 52 years is a long time to wait, but better late than never, and maybe, just maybe, this will help America understand that courage has no color, that sacrifice is sacrifice regardless of who makes it. that we're all Americans and we all deserve equal recognition for equal service. The ceremony ended. Baker shook hands with Clinton, with military officials, with the families of the other recipients. Media photographed him, interviewed him, asked him how it felt. How did it feel after 52 years? After watching white soldiers receive immediate recognition for actions no more courageous than his, after building a life in a country that denied him equal status despite his service. Baker's answer was measured, careful, diplomatic, but those who knew him understood what lay beneath the words. Relief, yes. Validation, certainly. But also sadness for the time wasted, the recognition denied, the systematic racism that had required half a century to partially correct. Baker lived 13 more years after receiving his Medal of Honor. He continued speaking about his experiences, continued advocating for racial justice, continued reminding America that its promises remained unfulfilled. He died on July 13, 2010, at age 90, the last living Black Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. His funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. Soldiers from the 92nd Infantry Division, descendants of the Buffalo Soldiers, served as honor guard. A general spoke about Baker's courage. A chaplain spoke about his faith. Friends and family spoke about his character. But perhaps the most powerful tribute came from a young Black Army officer, a captain 26 years old, the same age Baker had been in Italy. The captain stood at the graveside and said, "Lieutenant Baker made it possible for me to wear this uniform and this rank. He proved that Black soldiers could fight, could lead, could excel. He did it despite facing discrimination from his own army. He did it knowing he might never receive recognition. He did it because it needed to be done. We stand here today because Vernon Baker stood in Italy in 1945. We serve in an integrated military because men like him proved integration was the only just policy. We wear ranks. Our grandfathers were denied because Baker and soldiers like him demonstrated that merit, not color, should determine advancement. He waited 52 years for a medal, but he never waited to do what was right, never waited to fight for his country, never waited to demand that America live up to its ideals. That is the real legacy, not the medal, the refusal to accept injustice, even when that injustice came from the country he served. Castle Aghinolfi still stands in Italy. The stone walls Baker assaulted remain, scarred by bullets and shrapnel. The machine gun positions he destroyed were long ago dismantled. The observation post he captured has been restored. It is now a tourist site. Visitors come to see the medieval architecture, the panoramic views, the historical significance. Most don't know what happened there on April 5, 1945, don't know about Vernon Baker and 7 other soldiers crawling through darkness, don't know about the impossible mission, the killed Germans, the captured positions, don't know about the 2 men who died or the 2 who were wounded. There is no plaque, no memorial, no marker explaining that this castle, this insignificant piece of Italian hillside, was where a Black American officer proved what should never have needed proving, that courage transcends race, that leadership comes in all colors, that heroism is universal. In 2015, the Italian government, partnering with American veteran organizations, installed a small memorial at the base of Castle Aghinolfi, bronze plaque 3 feet by 2 feet. It reads, "In memory of 1st Lieutenant Vernon J. Baker and the soldiers of Company C. 370th Infantry Regiment, 92nd Infantry Division, United States Army, who assaulted German positions at this location on April 5 through 6, 1945. Their courage opened the path to victory in northern Italy. Their sacrifice reminds us that freedom requires eternal vigilance and equal justice." The memorial was dedicated on April 5, 2015, 70 years to the day after Baker's assault. His surviving family members attended, his son, now in his 60s, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, 3 generations born because Vernon Baker survived that night in 1945, born into an America slowly, imperfectly, moving toward the ideals Baker fought to defend. The story of Vernon Baker teaches multiple lessons, about courage, obviously, about leadership under impossible circumstances, about tactical brilliance and physical bravery. These lessons are important, but the deeper lesson is about injustice, about systematic discrimination that denied recognition to deserving soldiers based solely on race, about an America that asked black men to fight for freedom abroad while denying them equality at home, about the gap between American ideals and American practice. Baker's 52-year wait for recognition wasn't an anomaly, it was policy, deliberate, systematic policy designed to maintain racial hierarchy even in the face of overwhelming evidence that such hierarchy had no basis. In fact, Baker proved black officers could lead, could plan, could execute complex operations, could exceed the performance of white officers, could do everything white soldiers did, often better. And for 52 years, America's response was to pretend otherwise, to downgrade his award, to minimize his accomplishment, to maintain the fiction that white soldiers were inherently superior, not because evidence supported that conclusion, but because acknowledging the truth would require confronting uncomfortable realities about American racism. When Baker finally received his Medal of Honor in 1997, it wasn't because new evidence emerged. The evidence had existed since 1945. It wasn't because standards had changed. Standards of valor remained constant. It was because America, slowly and reluctantly, began acknowledging its own injustice, began admitting that race, not merit, had determined award decisions, began recognizing that correcting historical wrongs, however belatedly, mattered. But 52 years. Vernon Baker was 25 in 1945. He was 77 in 1997. More than half a century, an entire lifetime. Most of the soldiers who fought beside him were dead. Most of the officers who recommended him were dead. Most of the officials who downgraded his award were dead. Baker lived to see justice, but just barely. The other 6 black soldiers whose awards were corrected in 1997 had all died decades earlier. Their recognition came to families, not to the men themselves. Posthumous justice, better than no justice, but a poor substitute for timely recognition. What if Baker had received his Medal of Honor in 1945? How would his life have been different? Would police departments have rejected his applications? Would employers have denied him jobs? Would he have faced the same discrimination that marked his post-war years? Probably America in 1945 wasn't ready to treat black war heroes as equal citizens. The military could be integrated by executive order. Society couldn't. Baker would have faced discrimination regardless of his awards. The medal might have opened some doors, but it wouldn't have eliminated racism, wouldn't have transformed American society, wouldn't have granted him equality, but it would have meant something, would have acknowledged that his service, his courage, his sacrifice equaled that of any white soldier, would have sent a message to other black veterans that their contributions mattered, would have established officially and publicly that heroism transcended race. Instead, Baker waited, and in that waiting, in that 52-year gap between action and recognition, lies the real story, not just one man's courage on one night in Italy, but America's centuries-long failure to live up to its promise of equal justice, a failure that persisted through slavery, through Jim Crow, through segregation, through countless individual injustices, large and small. Baker's story isn't exceptional because he was extraordinarily brave. Many soldiers were brave. It is exceptional because his bravery was systematically denied recognition for half a century, because his achievement was deliberately minimized, because his service was officially valued less than that of white soldiers who did no more, and often less. On April 5, 1945, Vernon Baker killed 26 German soldiers, destroyed multiple defensive positions, captured valuable intelligence, and opened the path for his division's advance. He did this while leading black soldiers in a segregated army that considered them inferior. He did this knowing his achievement would likely be downgraded or ignored. He did it anyway. That is the real heroism, not just the tactical brilliance or physical courage, the moral courage to serve a country that denied him equality, to risk his life for ideals America proclaimed but didn't practice, to continue believing that change was possible even when evidence suggested otherwise. Baker died in 2010. He lived 90 years, saw America elect its first black president, saw the military integrate, saw civil rights legislation passed, saw progress, incomplete and uneven, but progress nonetheless. He saw enough to believe the long arc of moral universe was bending, however slowly, toward justice. But he also saw enough to know the work wasn't finished, that injustice persisted, That inequality remained embedded in American institutions, that the gap between American ideals and American practice, while narrowed, hadn't closed. If you found this story powerful, hit that like button. Every like helps us share more forgotten stories of courage and injustice. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're uncovering history that deserves to be remembered. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the United States, Europe, Africa, Asia? Our community spans the globe. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your thoughts. Tell us if this story changed how you see history. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping ensure that Vernon Baker's story and the stories of all soldiers denied recognition because of race don't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.